M.L. Spencer's Dragon Mage. This is an 818-page book with 100 chapters. And really, it's a young coming-of-age story. The main character discovers magic and gives it away. So that's all I'm going to say about that. And Aram is the main character. He is a shy, young, I'd say 12, 13-year-old boy who is shy and loves knots. So he lives in a fishing village and he talks to the sailors every time he can to find out new knots. And as he does that, he's introduced to Markus, who is a young boy who's maybe 2 or 3 years older, but is more outgoing. And he works with the fishermen of the village. His father owns some boats or something. And they end up bumping into each other. And a wandering bard comes to town. The bard tells the tale of a world split in two to save against some evil sorcerers. And so the world above is of men and the world below is of magic and dragons. So Aram and Markus live in the world of men, and it's split into multiple books, but at the beginning you kind of introduce the scene in the world, but then you find out that the main character has old blood. It's a brown blood that enables magic. So the bad guys are the XL sorcerers in the world of men. They exist in the world of men, but they go around hunting people with the old blood, and then they torture the spirit or essence out of them and use that to cast their magic. So they can't do magic on their own, but they use the essence of others. So the original father of all, their origin story, his wife has multiple children, and they want to ascend into divinity, but in order to do that, they have to drain the souls of those who practice magic. So the champion at the time split the world in two to help protect, against these, evil sorcerers ascending into becoming divine beings. So again, the XL sorcerers are the blue mantle bad guys. They are going around rounding up people who practice magic in the world of men. And how they do that is there is a gap, there's a void in between the two, and when it splits, XL sorcerers are trained to notice that, and so they go hunt down people who rupture the void. And so it's kind of described as like strings, and so it's woven, and when that gets torn, it kind of ripples across the way, and that's the trigger. And so the main character does this. He ripples the void, and so now the blue mantle XL sorcerers on their tail shows up to their village maybe a day or two after the bard is there. And so the bard is like, hey, let's get out of here. And so they run away, that kind of thing. So I don't want to give away the middle part of this story because there's a lot of story building and that kind of stuff. But in the end, or in the middle, Markus learns that he can help Aram, and Aram learns that he is really good with magic. But there's a limitation, and I don't want to give that away, but he figures out a way to become trained. He finds a teacher. And so he is able to work against the blue mantles and train and, become a champion, or try to become a champion. In order to become a champion, you have to go through the trials. And so really this whole training, I think it ends up being like the first 70 or 75 chapters are him learning about his powers and the world he lives in. So pretty cool. Things I liked, there is people who have magic, and then there's people who are the absence of magic. So that I thought was really interesting, right? Like a lot of fantasy books that involve magic, there's no real like defense. It's like, hey, you wave a wand and you deal a bunch of damage. But this, there is like a null, a negative to magic. So that was really interesting. I liked that. The different types of magic were really cool. There is, command, healing, different perceptions, blocking. So yeah, just hardening. Really, really cool that there was just the variety and also the cost. To me, that was one of my favorite parts of this. It sounds so simple, but again, waving a magic wand, dealing magical damage, right? It just happens everywhere. But the main character was like spent half the book recovering from using magic. So very cool. Liked that a lot. There were some parts that didn't get explained. It wasn't like major story arcs or anything, but the author didn't hold your hand. Like if there was a description of something and it didn't go into detail, we moved on. And I liked that. I liked that it wasn't like, hey, I'm going to explain everything into extreme detail, like the food they're eating, that kind of thing. It was just kind of keep going. So I liked that. I was worried. They kept introducing more and more characters, and I got worried. I'm like, crap, this is going to be, a 7-series book or 7-book series, and I'm going to be, stuck holding the bag with a cliffhanger. It was wrapped up really well. I enjoyed the ending. I thought that, for a single book, this did a good job rather than breaking it into a series. I thought it was a great selection. Something that I was not sure about is soulbound dragons. I'm not sure. Like, I liked that they were soulbound. I don't know how to describe it without giving it away. There were dragons that didn't, if a rider dies or if a dragon dies, usually the other doesn't survive. So if the rider dies, the dragon doesn't survive. If the dragon dies, then the rider doesn't survive. And there were like a handful of dragons that didn't die. So I don't know. Maybe that ties into the not explaining things. Maybe that's how they made the dragon scale armor. I'm just not sure. Like, I feel like that could be its own whole mini sub-series, is like dragon life and survival in this universe. So again, I was unsure on that. It wasn't something I liked or disliked. It was just something that I was unsure about. The thing I didn't like, though, was I kept looking at Aram as a young boy, which he starts off as. But then I think there's like one chapter where it's like 4 years later or something like that. So then he's like middle teens. And I couldn't get past it. I kept picturing him as a young boy. And so, by the end of the book, he's like full-on teenager and like almost a man. And it took me a long time, way too long, to like age him in my mind. So the overseers just seemed too alien. I get it, it's fantasy, like you can do whatever you want. I don't know why. They just didn't seem, they fit, but it just seemed off to me. I don't know how to describe it other than that. But yeah, I think the trials happen at around page 600-ish out of an 800-page book, and maybe roughly 75 out of 100 chapters. So like there's a lot to the story building, and there's a lot to this universe, and then like the action happens and the battles and all that towards the end. So really, it is a hefty undertaking, and this adventure was a fun one. This was a gift, so this is a very new looking book, but I did enjoy it. I was happily surprised by this book. I had never heard of the author or the book, so to me, this was just a fun adventure, and I recommend it. So buy your books used.